This is Justin.
And this is Haley. You're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize the conversations around money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties! Welcome to The Price of Avocado Toast, Episode 6.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we are so glad to be having this conversation with you today. And I mean that. We're so glad to be having this conversation with you today. We recently finished up the home buying process series, which was 2 episodes, one with a mortgage loan officer and then the other with a millennial realtor. And we figured now would be a really good time to get into the next topic we wanted to talk about, which is having those hard conversations with your family about money. And we kind of have an interesting reason as why we wanted to talk about this. Honey, do you want to go ahead and be the one to share why we are getting started on this?
Yeah, totally. So after episode 1 and 2 dropped, my mom came to visit, and actually before she even came to visit, she called me and she was so concerned. She really wanted to talk to me about something, but she just didn't really know how to bring it up, and she felt super uncomfortable, and eventually I finally got it out of her, and she was saying, like, you know, on the podcast, you said several times that you grew up low income, and that wasn't necessarily the case. And so that really sparked a conversation between the two of us about what that meant to me, what it meant to her, and quite frankly, I think she was kind of offended that I said that, but from my perspective, from my experience, I felt like I was from a low-income family, low-income household. I kind of just wanted to talk about this. My experience was I was raised by a single mom, and some people who know me within the last 20 years or so might be like, you weren't raised by a single mom. Well, I was raised by a single mom for the first 10 years of my life, so the big chunk of my childhood was, and then my mom married my stepdad who adopted me, and then I had 2 parents from then on. For my whole entire life, until I was about 10 or 11 years old, I was just raised by a single mom. So just like you, it was a struggling single-parent household, but she was a little offended that I referred to it as low income. And so if you follow us on Instagram, if you don't, you should. But if you follow us on Instagram, I did a poll a couple weeks ago asking what low income meant to you guys and what you thought it meant. And I got a bunch of feedback. But before I even get into that, Justin, what do you think low income means? I know you know what this whole conversation is going to be about, but how would you define low income in your own words?
That's a great question, because I don't know if we've talked about that personally. I think I would probably describe it as much like when I like to describe, somebody's poor if they have an income problem. Somebody's broke when they have an outgo problem, right? Like they're spending too much, they owe somebody money, they're broke. Mm-hmm. I think you're poor when your income, for whatever type of reason, whether it be systemic or another reason, your income just isn't enough to sustain in the world we live in nowadays. And, you look at some of those things, like personally, I believe that access to internet is a utility. Much like gas and water and electric, you need to have internet nowadays to survive in some realms, right? We look at distance learning as teachers. You need to have internet. You need to have internet if you're a student. So I would say that I like to think of low income as you don't have enough income to meet the basic needs and utilities for the area that you live in.
Okay. So my perspective was slightly different. I kind of just associated low income with being a household that just didn't have that much extra money, which is where I came from. We were able to pay the bills, we were able to do what we needed to do, but not much beyond that. And so you are saying it's more along the lines of maybe not even being able to meet those basic needs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Okay, so on Instagram, when I did the poll, the responses that I got kind of go hand in hand with what we just said, the two sides of that. On Justin's perspective of not being able to cover like basic expenses, I had a couple people say, well, the first one I have listed was can't cover expenses. Below living wage, the state helps you to afford necessities, government assistance, not having a living wage, close to the poverty line, or minimum wage jobs. Now, all of those responses came from you guys, from what you thought low income meant to you. Now, along my side of things, what I thought low income was, there were also responses that were slightly different, but that said it was maybe income that was below the average wage for your area. So it's just a little bit lower than normal. Affordable, I'm not quite sure what that means. Maybe just not super expensive.
Or maybe you're like you're able to afford what you're doing, but you're never getting ahead.
Yeah, that would make sense. Below average income, only making bare minimum, so being able to really just pay your bills, but that's it, not much extra. Around or below the average American income, and income that allows you, I love this one, income that allows you to survive but not thrive. So you are surviving, you're doing what you need to do, but you do not have the extra disposable income to just go do a bunch of stuff. And some people might argue that thriving, what is that? But I really like that response. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's also like we mentioned in one of the first episodes, I can't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2, but most Americans can't handle a $400 emergency, right? And so you can survive but not thrive. And when you start to thrive, you're able to cover those emergencies, so they're not massive hiccups, but they're just like a quick, bump in the road, and you're able to get back on track. I think that that's a pretty important thing to kind of conceptualize there. And I think it's also really interesting that my answer for low income really aligns with many of the things for how my household grew up.
Yeah, totally.
And that your answer really aligns for how your house grew up. And now that you've spoken with your mom and had this conversation. So continue on that.
Okay, so this is not about my mom, and it's not about the way I was raised. It's more so about my mindset and the conversation that we had. And that's kind of where I want to go with this. So my mom was like a little, this conversation, I don't mean to offend anyone by what I'm going to say, but this is the conversation I had with my mom, and it is what it is. But she was just a little offended that I referred to us as being a low-income household, because she worked so hard and she did what she needed to do to pay her bills and to get us what we needed, but there wasn't much extra after that. And kind of going along with what all of you guys said when you said it's along the lines of like government assistance, my mom was, to be honest, she was kind of offended. She's like, we never had food stamps. We never had help with anything. Like, I did everything I could. Yes, but that's it. It was paycheck to paycheck. And then that got me thinking. I went on this whole entire tangent. If low income is paycheck to paycheck, then so many people are low income, or the way that I would have described it. So it just really got me thinking about what it means to be low income and the privileges that we have. My mom also mentioned, people that are from low income households often don't go to college. She said to me, you said in one of the first episodes it was always expected for you to go to college. People from low-income households don't have that expectation. Like, it's just a different lifestyle. So I looked up what low income truly means, and I got a couple of different definitions, but from Farlex Financial Dictionary, they say that low-income persons have less disposable income than others and may sometimes struggle to pay their bills. That kind of goes along with what I was saying. There's just not a lot of extra money to be spent. Low-income persons often have low job security and are strongly correlated with low education levels, kind of like what my mom said. Low-income persons may qualify for government assistance programs, though many do not because they earn too much, but not enough to live comfortably. So the people that are living paycheck to paycheck, or people that can't necessarily cover $400 emergency might even be under that category too. So I feel like this is very broad, and there are so many ways we could go with this, but the whole reason we're talking about this is that this conversation I had with my mom, I think, was the first like real money adult conversation we ever had that was like, hey, I disagree with you. Let's kind of chat about that.
I think that it's interesting too because we tend to sugarcoat things or cover things for our family or our friends or our children, more importantly, because we want to look like we've got it all put together. Much like you and I lived this lifestyle that we wanted to look like we had it all put together well and that we were comfortable. Like, the problem was we weren't being totally honest. And so that's where this episode really stems from, is how do we have those honest conversations with people, showing them our, financial vulnerabilities, but feeling comfortable enough to talk about those and to know that that person's not going to judge or, get worried or get scared, but just either walk alongside us if we're on a debt journey, or to really understand where we're coming from if we need to have that money conversation. For me personally, I was acutely aware of what my family did and did not have when I was growing up. You were raised by a single mom with just you in the home. I had 2 other siblings. And so I knew at a young age what my family did and did not have. And, we always made ends meet, but following along the lines of what the listeners and you and I kind of click as low income, we got government assistance. I was telling you earlier today that I remember going down to the property management place and paying rent, and rent was only like a couple $100. I think it was like $100 and something bucks. And HUD took care of the rest of it for us because we were low income. And we got food stamps. I remember going to the store and paying for stuff in food stamps. And I was actually comfortable with it because my mom was so honest with us about it. It can be really difficult for some people, and there can be some shame behind it. But for us, I knew our situation, and I felt comfortable in those moments.
What did she say to you guys to normalize what was going on? Like, how does she even bring that up with you guys, especially when you were younger?
That's a good question. And I wish I had that answer to give to a listener who's struggling right now or who needs to have that conversation with their own child. But I don't remember her ever having that conversation with us.
Was it just a normal thing you guys talked about?
Yeah, it just kind of was spoken about. I do remember her saying, like, hey, I can't take off work. I need to earn this money and I need to work this shift. And so, that would sometimes manifest itself in like us being watched by my older sister for a little bit or something, or her not being able to race home on the weekends or something like that. But I don't remember her ever sitting down and saying, hey, this is how it is. And it's interesting because now I get uncomfortable talking to my mom sometimes about money as an adult, right? As a kid, I think as a kid, when my mom had all the power, it was just kind of like, well, she's the adult, I'm the child, I listen to mom says this, and that's what goes on. And I knew we were low income. We had an income problem, not an outgo problem. And we did the best that we could by getting assistance and all of that stuff. And it's so cool because through the government assistance and stuff, my mom went back to school. She graduated as the valedictorian of her class and got a great job right out of school working for the college that she went to. And it was really great because she used that government assistance to better her life and to help us succeed. But now when I talk to my mom about money, I think because we have such a unique vantage point from what you and I have been through as a couple and, the podcast now and following the Ramsey plan, we have so much more information than I know my mom ever had as a single mom. And she probably could have found it, right? I mean, I know Dave Ramsey's been around, but she just simply didn't. And that's through no fault of her own. But I think that's probably why. Now we come from the position of knowledge and power. And so it's hard for me to be like, hey, mom, this is what you should do. Or, like, hey, think about this, think about that.
As her child.
Because I still am her son. You know what I mean? I'm a grown adult, but she's always going to be my mom. And I'm always going to look at her in that regard. So I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for the listener of like, how did my mom approach that subject?
Well, my mom did mention when I was talking to her, because I said, like, it was always expected that I would go to college. It was always expected that I would get student loans, all of these things. And she said, well, even if I taught you all of that, even if I told you all of these things, you still were a stubborn teenager who would have just gone off and done whatever you wanted anyway. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it, and yes, that is true, but I wonder if, like, I'm not faulting her at all. I know that this is a giant problem that everyone really deals with, and I wonder if the transparency well, first off, if she knew what to do, and she was taught what to do, and it was transparent for her, and my entire life was talked about how to handle money, if I would have done things differently. I can't help but think that. But I'm not sitting here playing the wishing game. I am just thankful that we are not even 30 and we are dealing with these like eye-opening experiences with our money. Thank God we're not 45, 50 years old. Like, this could have happened so much later. But it's just funny because she was like, there's no way you would have listened to me if I said that. And I was thinking she's probably right.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you do if those roles were reversed? Like, what do you think you could have said to 18-year-old Haley to, like, make the better decision? I mean, because you got to agree, you probably would not have listened.
No, yeah, I totally wouldn't have listened. And I thought about that, and I'm trying to think of it from the perspective of us talking eventually to Calliope and our future kids about money. And I just think that it starts with being transparent in general, just talking about what you can afford, what you can't afford, but we just got our electric bill and it was like really, really high because
summer rates spiking.
They spiked it for summer rates. And so maybe like sitting down, obviously not with our 7-month-old, but years down the road, sitting down with the kid and showing them the bill and how to read it, and maybe even making it like I'm totally a teacher here, making it like a math problem or something. I don't know where that even begins, but just talking about it, I think, is really the first step.
I agree. Do you think that there's a point at which there's too much transparency? What would you feel is like, whoa, that's too much. You probably don't need to be sharing that with a kid. I agree. I think that idea of like, you really could make it like a math problem, right? Like, hey, the summer rate is 13 cents per, I don't know, what's a lighting fixture? Kilowatts? I don't know. But, it's this much, and we spent this much. How many did we use, right? You could theoretically do that. We're a household of teachers, so it might be easier for us with nerdy kids.
Make it a game.
Yeah.
We're going to try to make the PG&E bill lower this month.
Yeah, that's it. That's a house full of athletes. We're so competitive. Hey, how quick can you turn off that light? But seriously, like, what's too transparent? I mean, for me personally, I know that my mom struggled at times when we were younger, and I don't ever remember a time where it was like, whoa, that's too much to lay on me. At least off the top of my mind, I can't think of anything. But I wonder what that might be, If you're in danger of being foreclosed every month and the bank's hounding you and creditors are calling you, at that point it might be like, okay, whoa, I don't need to be sharing this with my 10-year-old. I need to be owning this. But what do you think?
Okay, I kind of disagree with you on that. And only because I taught 9 and 10-year-olds who dealt with some serious traumas in their home. They're so resilient. I believe that children, they can handle way more than we think that they can.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to making it a normal conversation between you guys. And talking about losing your home and all of that sounds scary, but I think that if you're at that stage and you're about to foreclose on your house, or your car is getting repossessed in the middle of the night, you're probably really stressed out and uncomfortable to be around anyway. So if you give the children a reason behind your behavior, I feel like that would be so much, more, just better for the whole family. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I know that Ramsey Solutions does have materials and I think books and stuff for how to talk to your kids about money. I think it's like Smart Kids, Smart Money or something like that. And you can maybe understand that. Who knows? We got a text from our coach, Ryan today. This dude's such a rock star, and we're so blessed to work with him. He's already helped us so much. But he shot us a text today and was like, hey, I can't wait to hear this next episode. My family and I do some really cool stuff around money. So I know we're going to have a meeting with him soon, and I'm kind of excited to hear like what he says. But along that line, let's move from talking to children. What is it like talking to your family? Because we've started this podcast because we could not shut up about it with family, talking about money. And it's so uncomfortable. So how do you talk to family about that? You and I are so transparent with a podcast and the freaking poster on the wall and the Instagram and all this stuff. What advice would you give to somebody that's just out there listening right now like, hey, I want to talk to my family about money. I want to see where they're at with things. I want to make sure that they're okay moving forward and that we can all be successful. How do you even suggest that somebody approaches that topic?
Well, you always ask people, hey, I have a question. What do you say? You mention it like, hey, if this is inappropriate, like, let me know. I won't mention it. But when you're asking someone how much something costs, or if you want to ask someone a personal question about their finances, you approach it so delicately that it's okay for them to be like, that's a little too personal. I think I'm not going to share that with you. But because you come off so transparent and you don't have this hard push with them, I have never actually been in person when you ask someone a question and they were like uncomfortable and didn't share.
Oh, cool. That's
Do you
good
know what
to
I'm
know.
talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I will oftentimes ask people, and I did this weekend asking somebody a question. I said like, hey, I have a really personal question. Are you comfortable with me asking you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I kind of, I mean, obviously personal question could be from finance to, religious background to political view or whatever. But I try and let them know like, hey, this is going to be really personal. And then I think that it almost catches them off guard because finances are personal, but it's not like what they're expecting, right? Like young people are like, oh my God, what's this weirdo going to ask me? Whereas I'm just like, hey, tell me more about this. Or like, hey, do you have any life insurance at work?
Hey, how much did it cost to get your house painted?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, what did it cost to get that done, your fence? Yeah, I think it makes people a little bit more comfortable.
But the way that you do that, I really think frames it for friends and family or just adults in general. It makes people comfortable. And when they are uncomfortable, they're obviously not going to want to talk about some weird taboo topic that is not talked about. So you really have to make people comfortable enough around you to talk about that. Now, we started this because we could not stop talking about our finances and how jacked up we were. But I felt like sometimes it was a little too much for people to handle, and that they maybe were viewing us as being like better than, or we all of a sudden know everything about money and we're trying to tell everyone what to do. So there's a fine line when you're speaking with other adults about money where I feel like if they are not comfortable, they will feel like you're telling them what to do or judging them or just being a little too much for them to handle. So you really have to make it an open, two-way, comfortable street.
Mm-hmm. And something that you press a lot on me that I really appreciate is you're constantly reminding me like, hey, don't tell, show.
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't tell somebody what's the right thing to do. Why don't we just keep doing the right thing and let people see that in whatever capacity, whether that's content on Instagram or just our general lives, or like, hey, yeah, we sold our car because we did this instead. And people are going to be like, hey, maybe I should do that. And we did. We had like 2 or 3 people immediately like, I'm thinking of selling my car so that I can do this. Mm-hmm. And I've appreciated that about you, is that you constantly remind me like, hey, you don't have to tell everybody. You can just show by your actions and keep it not quite as in your face. Because I have a tendency to do that. I'm a big personality, and I don't want to freaking be like, I know better, but I blew $600,000. I do know better. You know what I mean? Nobody can spend it like I can freaking spend it. So I'm like, dude, let me help you before you are, writing checks that your bank account's not soon going to be able to cash. And so I appreciate that about you, that you constantly remind me, don't tell, just show.
Well, thank you. But that makes me think of something. So on Instagram and through the podcast, we've been so transparent about our debt journey. We did some math, and I don't really know how I got this wrong, to begin with. I think that the numbers that we put on our debt student loan mountain poster were accurate at that time, and then they accrued interest, so that's why it kind of got off. But a couple weeks ago, I said that we were under $100,000 of student loans, and someone actually pointed out that we are not. We still have, I did the math, we still have like $500 left, and I'm so disappointed and sad because I thought we were there, but you know what? The only reason we're not is because of the interest and my lack of being able to do math, but
we'll get there.
We will.
We'll get there. So, honey, have you had any hard conversations with your friends about money? Hard or maybe uncomfortable or weird? Anything like that?
That's a good question. I've had a lot of friends that lately, since we've started this and opened up the conversation, they've really wanted to talk about their budget and their debt and their spending habits. But those obviously aren't hard or weird because I'm open to all of that. But I can't think of anything that I've had with anyone that's been difficult with friends. More so, it's with family that gets a little awkward. Mm-hmm. Friends, I feel like we can be honest, and it is what it is because we're all the same age. We're all making the same mistakes, and I feel like it's pretty well known. But with family, that's where it gets kind of funky.
Mm-hmm. For me personally, I haven't had any hard conversations with friends that I've brought up, but I've had a couple that like other friends have brought up, and the reason they were hard thinking back to it was because they were being so honest. Like I've had conversations where friends are like, dude, I'm struggling. Mm-hmm. And this is really hard for me right now. Or like, I can't do that. I don't have the money. And I think back to how you and I felt when we were kind of trying to live that lifestyle that we can't really afford. And so like, if you're listening to this and you feel like you're one of those friends, either for Haley and I, or you're just in your own life been like that to one of your other friends, like bravo for being so honest and like courageous, because that's so freaking hard. And I know, like, I say that now as we're on a microphone, like, sharing our story to a bunch of other people. But, like, it's so cool for people to be able to do that with their friends. And, you know, if somebody's shared that with you, then that means they trust you as a friend and they feel safe with you. So, bravo. That's just awesome. It's really cool that you're providing that space for them. So, we have those hard conversations with family. We have those hard conversations with friends. And we kind of briefly got into talking about it with kids. What's one thing you want to do for our kids, honey, to help normalize that conversation other than playing the Dave Ramsey podcast in the car when we're constantly driving around?
I don't know. Maybe what if we had them sit down when we do our budget meeting every month?
Oh, that could be good.
And it'd be kind of cool to have their perspective. I'm obviously thinking of older children, you know, like elementary age, talk about like things they want to do or things that they want, because what I love most about the budget is that it gives you permission to spend and plan for things. Like we knew we were going to get our family photos this week, so we planned for it, and then we don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So I think if they're part of that conversation and they hear us talking about it and it's back and forth, that would be good.
I think it goes back to much like episode 3 for us, though, about why you should try your best to get out of debt.
Yeah.
You know, we had a good talk with our financial coach, Ryan. I know I'm bringing it up again, but where he was like, hey, make sure you guys are preaching what you're willing to practice. And episode 3 is so important because, like, we're not going to go into debt. I'm not taking out credit. I'm not going to owe somebody else money again other than my home, obviously. And so if you start your own life on the right foot, by the time your children come and they just see the way that you live your life, like, oh, hey, no, we don't take out credit. We work really hard and bust our tail and save up the cash, and we spend appropriately and we save appropriately and we budget appropriately for the things that we know are going to come up. Then I think naturally kids are learners like that. Like, we're both teachers. We know that there's always that kid out there that just like watches you do it and picks it up immediately. And if you're doing that for your kids, I think that seeing that every single day, it's hard to just not buy in immediately.
So what can people do to normalize these conversations with everyone in their lives? We said that you really need to have an open communication, trusting, transparent circle with them. Because if who you're talking to, if they're not comfortable, they're going to shut off and they're going to put up a wall. What else can they do?
Well, I think one of the big things for you and I, whenever we have our budget meeting, is you're always like, dude, put your phone down. Get off of
Yes.
Twitter. Get off of Facebook. Get off of Instagram, whatever it may be. So shut off that stuff. Shut off the TV. Shut off your phone. Disconnect and like sit down and be honest with your partner or your family or your friends or your children, because we have to have those conversations in a space where people are given their full attention. And people are like, hey, this is important and I'm here right now. And this is a space where you can say how you feel and I can say how I feel, and we're going to get through it and love each other on the other side. But we got to have a conversation about this stuff. Whether it's, hey, bud, sit down. We got to talk about, travel hockey's not in the budget for us. We can't do that. Or, hey, mom, sit down. We got to talk about life insurance. Or we got to talk about long-term care. Or, hey, friend, sit down. I'm really worried about this thing or this thing. And I'm saying this because I love you and I care about you. But if you're plugged into your phone or somebody's, watching TV while you're having that conversation, it just waters it down. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make it as honest as it should be. And it sucks because we do those things to alleviate the tension, but we kind of have to sit in that tension a little bit. So that's why it goes back to that first point of like, make a comfortable space to have that conversation. And then I think the third point would just be speak honestly. And that, again, ties to the first part. If you're creating a comfortable space, then you're going to speak honestly. No, I'm not comfortable with this because of X, Y, or Z, or I think you should do this because of X, Y, or Z. What do you think about it?
Someone whom I was just speaking to on Instagram today mentioned that she had a difficult conversation with a family member in the past where she was trying to pay off debt, and her mom asked if they could loan her some money during that time. And it was quite a bit of money, I think $6,000 or something. Oh. And they're in the middle of paying off student loans and they had to say no. And these conversations sometimes are so incredibly difficult because you have to, we can go so many different ways with this episode right now, but when you have to tell someone no and you have to create boundaries, it can be so incredibly awkward and uncomfortable, and it can feel like, hey, I love you and I care about you, but I cannot do this. And then the other person's probably thinking like, oh, they just want to pay off their timeshare, but they can't help me. It's a transparent thing, like Justin just said, without the honesty, they're not going to understand where you're coming from. And the whole entire conversation about money really has to stem from wanting to have the conversation and wanting them to know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and it's coming from a place of love, right?
Yeah.
You're not coming from a place of anger or contentment or anything like that. You're coming from a place of, I love you, I want better for you, I want better for your family, my family, whatever the capacity is of your relationship. Thanks for talking about sharing those boundaries and being upfront about them, because you know me, I struggle with that so much, putting up those boundaries. I'm such a giver that I'm like, yes, 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 whether it's my time or money or whatever it may be. I struggle so much with saying, no, I'm stretched too thin. And what's really cool is I read that book, Essentialism, and Friends on Fire did their episode about it. And in the book, he gives you 8 ways to say no. And it's so cool because some of them are like, I can do this, but I can't agree to this. Or, no, thank you, I'm just too stretched for time. And there's just 8 really clean ways to just tell somebody no. And I was hearing it like, oh my God, I need to write these on my forearm so I constantly remember this.
Get a tattoo.
Yeah, seriously. So the 3 keys, what did we say they are?
We said having trust, being transparent and honest, disconnecting and giving all of your attention. Anything else you want to add? I feel like those are definitely the most important.
I feel like those are definitely important. And I would say this, let's challenge listeners. If you're listening to this right now, message us on Price of Avocado Toast Instagram, or if you're on Twitter, that's cool too, because I get to run the Twitter account. But if you're listening to this and you're on Instagram, message us there and Haley will interact with you about what you think the other keys to success in that conversation would be. What's going to make that conversation be successful? Oh, I'll put a postscript in it. I think coming with information is really important.
Ooh.
Right? Like, don't just show up and be like, I think you should do this. Be like, I think you should do this because, and here's some things that I found that can help you. I was talking to my brother and sister today about potentially setting up some stuff for our families moving forward. And I was like, I'm going to do some research. And then my sister was like, I'm going to do some research too. And that was so cool because I was like, oh, sick. I'm not going to be the only one bringing information to this conversation. And she might find new information that I haven't heard or a new option for us. And so that's the PS. PS, bring information. I like that.
People will definitely listen to you more if you come with some research and some valid facts. They will be like, okay,
yes,
maybe they know what they're talking about.
I can't refute that. They've clearly done their homework. Yeah. So again, if you have any other ideas, message us on Instagram with those because we want to know what we can do for when we have to have those conversations with baby Calliope.
We also would love it after listening to this episode if you posted it on Instagram and wrote a little blurb about a difficult conversation you have had with friends or family or one that you intend on having. Maybe this episode is the one that gets you ready and confident for that awkward money conversation. So we want to know which ones you're having.
Yes, we want to normalize the conversations by being transparent and sharing our own, but ultimately we want others to do the same.
Yes.
Like we want other millennials to be like, no, I'm comfortable sharing what's going on in my world because I know other people are going to support and love me through it.
Mm-hmm. And we are not, I've said this before and I will continue to say it, we are not here because we know everything. We are here because we are teachers who are constantly learning and trying to teach ourselves what to do. And a lot of that comes from what we have done wrong. If you are just tuning in now, please tune into episode 1. You will be entertained by all of our mishaps.
And then if they start from episode 1 and they got all the way here to episode 6, then they definitely want to listen to episode 7 because it is time to write your budget, baby. Ooh.
August budget. We
so
are
stoked.
going to talk about how to budget, what we do to budget. We're going to break down budget items, all of that. We've got a lot of questions that are coming our way, so we're going to send some information your way.
Yes, and the budget's so important. It just holds you so accountable. So I can't wait to share that for episode 7.
And it's kind of fun.
Yeah, the nerd in me absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
It's growing on me.
Yeah, make sure you listen into episode 7. That's going to be a wrap on this episode of The Price of Avocado Toast. As always, we are so glad that you guys were able to listen to this important conversation today. We're so glad to be able to share it with you, and we're so proud to be a part of this community. As always, happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties.
If you're interested in speaking more with a financial coach, hit up our coach Ryan at MeFinanciallyFree on Instagram. Use the promo code HELP50 in the consultation notes section to receive 50% off.
Thank you for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you vibed with this episode, we would love it if you shared it on your social media and tagged us so we can say thanks.